The security camera footage was crystal clear. Karen's face twisted with rage as she raised the crowbar above the prize-winning roses. But what happened next would destroy more than just a garden. Because when Marcus finally discovered who had been sabotaging his backyard sanctuary for months, the truth would shatter everything he thought he knew about his neighbor. His marriage and the dark secret buried beneath Marcus' chin wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped back to admire his handiwork. The Japanese maple he'd planted cast delicate shadows across the newly installed stone pathway, its crimson leaves catching the late afternoon sun like drops of fire. 3 months of back-breaking work had transformed his disaster of a backyard into something that belonged in a magazine. "It's absolutely stunning, honey." Sarah emerged from the sliding glass door, carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. Her smile was radiant as she surveyed the transformed space, the raised vegetable beds bursting with tomatoes and herbs, the pergola draped with flowering vines, the koi pond with its gentle waterfall creating a symphony of tranquil sounds. Marcus accepted the glass gratefully, his chest swelling with pride. "I can't believe we actually pulled it off. Remember what this looked like in April?" Sarah laughed, settling beside him on the new teak bench. "You mean the wasteland of dead grass and that horrifying concrete slab? I thought you'd lost your mind when you said you wanted to do this yourself." The transformation had been Marcus's obsession since the day they'd moved in. While other houses on Maple Street boasted manicured lawns and generic landscaping, Marcus had envisioned something different, a living work of art that would be their private oasis. Every weekend for months, he'd been out here at dawn, digging, planting, building. His hands bore the scars of countless thorns and splinters, but the result was worth every drop of blood. "The Hendersons stopped by yesterday," Sarah said, sipping her tea. Janet couldn't stop raving about the butterfly garden. "She wants to know where you got those purple flowers." "Salvia," Marcus said automatically, his eyes scanning the neat borders where the deep purple spikes swayed in the gentle breeze. "I started them from seed in the basement." A sharp crack echoed from the direction of the fence line, followed by muffled cursing. Marcus frowned, setting down his glass. The sounds were coming from Karen Mitchell's backyard, their neighbor to the west, whose own yard was a testament to suburban conformity with its uniform grass and predictable shrub borders. "What do you think she's doing over there?" Sarah asked, lowering her voice instinctively. Marcus shrugged, though unease prickled at the back of his neck. Karen had been acting strange lately, stranger than usual. She'd always been the type to call the city about minor code violations or complain about trash cans being left out too long, but her behavior had escalated since his garden project began. Last week, she'd accused him of allowing his sprinkler system to spray onto her property. The week before, she'd claimed his compost bin was attracting rats. "She's probably just doing some yard work," he said. Though the sounds didn't match any gardening activity he could identify. Another loud crack, followed by what sounded like metal striking stone. Sarah's brow furrowed. "Should we check on her? That doesn't sound normal." Before Marcus could respond, Karen's voice rang out, sharp and angry. "This is absolutely ridiculous. Who does he think he is?" Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. The words were clearly audible over the 6-foot privacy fence that separated their properties. "I worked too hard for this neighborhood to let some show-off ruin everything," Karen continued, apparently talking to someone or herself. 30 years I've lived here. 30 years of keeping standards." Marcus, Sarah whispered, her face pale. "I think she's talking about you." The sounds continued scraping, banging, the unmistakable noise of something being destroyed. Marcus felt his stomach drop as realization dawned. He strode to the fence line, pressing his ear against the cedar boards. "Karen," he called out, "everything okay over there?" Sudden silence, then footsteps retreating rapidly across what sounded like gravel. Marcus looked back at Sarah, who had risen from the bench, her tea glass forgotten. "I'm going to walk around front and check on her." "Marcus, maybe we should just," but he was already heading for the side gate. The unease that had been building for weeks was crystallizing into something harder, more urgent. All those small complaints, the hostile stares when he worked in the garden, the way she'd position herself by her kitchen window to watch his every move, it was all clicking into place. As he rounded the corner of his house, Marcus saw Karen's front door slam shut. Her curtains twitched, then fell still. He paused on the sidewalk, studying her house. Everything appeared normal from the street, the same beige siding, the same boring foundation plantings, the same pristine driveway where not a single leaf dared to linger. But something was off. There was a tension in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Marcus walked to Karen's front door and knocked. The house remained silent, though he could feel eyes watching him from behind the living room curtains. "Karen, I heard some noise. Just wanted to make sure you're all right." Still nothing. He knocked again, harder this time. "Karen." The door finally opened, but only a crack. Karen's face appeared in the gap, her usually perfectly styled gray, hair disheveled, dirt smudged on her cheek. "What do you want?" Her voice was tight, defensive. "I heard some loud noises from your backyard. Sounded like something might have fallen or broken. I wanted to make sure you weren't hurt." Karen's eyes narrowed. "I'm fine. I don't need you checking up on me. I'm just being neighborly." Neighborly. Karen's laugh was harsh. "Is that what you call it, turning our quiet street into some kind of botanical circus? Making the rest of us look like we don't care about our homes?" Marcus blinked, taken aback by the venom in her voice. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Of course you don't." Karen opened the door wider, and Marcus could see she was wearing gardening gloves, the kind of heavy-duty ones used for handling thorny plants or rough materials. "You move in here with your big ideas, thinking you can just change everything to suit yourself. Some of us have been maintaining standards in this neighborhood for decades." "Karen, I was just trying to improve my own property. I wasn't trying to make anyone look bad." "Well, you failed at that, didn't you?" She stepped onto the porch, and Marcus caught a whiff of something acrid like burning plastic mixed with plant matter. "Every day, people drive by slow just to stare at your garden show. Property values, Marcus. Property values and neighborhood character matter to those of us who plan to stay here." The absurdity of the complaint would have been laughable, if not for the genuine fury in Karen's eyes. "Karen, beautiful landscaping typically increases property values, not decreases them." "Beautiful." She practically spat the word. "It's pretentious. It's excessive. It's icks." She struggled for words, her hands clenching and unclenching at her sides. "It's not what this neighborhood is about." Marcus felt his own temper beginning to rise. He'd spent months of his life and thousands of dollars creating something beautiful, something that brought him and Sarah joy every single day. To hear it dismissed as pretentious and excessive by someone whose idea of landscaping was 3 identical evergreen shrubs felt like a personal attack. "I'm sorry you feel that way," he said, working to keep his voice level. "But it's my property, and I have the right to landscape it however I choose, as long as I'm following city codes, which I am." Karen's face flushed red. "Your rights. Always about your rights, isn't it? What about the rights of people who've been here longer? What about our right to live in a neighborhood that isn't turned into some kind of ... double quotes of what, Karen?" "Freak show," she finished, the words sharp as glass. The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at her, this woman he'd always thought of as merely overly particular, and saw something he hadn't recognized before. This wasn't about property values or neighborhood standards. This was about something deeper, uglier. "I think this conversation is over," he said. Quietly, "Yes, it is." Karen stepped back toward her door. "But don't think this is over, Marcus. Some of us won't stand by and watch our neighborhood turned into your personal art project." The door slammed with enough force to rattle the frame. Marcus stood on the porch for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Then he walked around to the back of Karen's house, following the side yard until he could see into her backyard. What he found there made his blood run cold. Karen's normally pristine yard looked like a war zone. The grass was torn up and ragged patches, and her prized rose bushes, the ones she'd tended for years, lay in mangled heaps. Garden tools were scattered across the lawn, a shovel with its handle snapped in half, a rake with several tines missing, a hoe bent at an impossible angle. But it was what he saw near the fence line that made his heart hammer against his ribs. A crowbar lay abandoned on the ground, and beside it, a pile of what looked like broken pottery and crushed plant material. As his eyes adjusted to the shadows, Marcus realized what he was looking at: the remains of his ceramic planters, the ones he'd positioned along his side of the fence. Somehow, Karen had managed to reach over and destroy. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction he'd had with Karen over the past 3 months. The complaints about his sprinkler system, the pointed comments about maintaining neighborhood standards, the way she'd positioned herself by her kitchen window every morning. Watching him work in the garden with what he'd mistaken for idle curiosity, it hadn't been curiosity, it had been surveillance. At 5:30 a.m., he gave up on sleep and crept downstairs to his laptop. The security system app loaded slowly, his hands trembling as he navigated to the previous day's footage. The camera, hidden among the branches of his Japanese maple, had a clear view of the fence line where Karen had carved her message. What he saw made his stomach lurch. The timestamp read 2:47 p.m. exactly when he and Sarah had been sitting on the front porch, discussing weekend plans. On screen, Karen's head appeared above the fence line. She was standing on something, a ladder, maybe a step ladder, her face twisted with concentration as she reached over with a long-handled tool. A tree pruner, Marcus realized. She was systematically cutting down his dahlias, her movements precise and methodical. It got worse. Marcus fast-forwarded through the footage, his heart hammering as he watched Karen make multiple trips over the fence. She wasn't just destroying plants randomly, she was targeting specific specimens. The dahlias he'd spent 2 years cultivating, the heirloom tomatoes he'd started from seeds his grandmother had saved, the rare butterfly bush he'd special ordered from a nursery in Oregon. She knew exactly what she was destroying. This wasn't vandalism born of sudden rage. This was calculated, informed destruction designed to cause maximum emotional and financial damage. The worst part came at 4:23 p.m. Karen appeared again, this time carrying a small container. She poured something liquid around the base of his prize rosebush, the David Austin variety that had cost him $200 and taken 3 years to establish. Even through the grainy security footage, Marcus could see the plant's leaves beginning to curl and blacken within minutes. Herbicide? She'd poisoned his roses. Jesus Christ, he whispered, his hands shaking as he saved the video files to his computer. This wasn't just property damage anymore. This was systematic destruction of property worth thousands of dollars. Footsteps on the stairs made him quickly sit. Close the laptop. Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, her hair tousled from sleep, concern etched across her face. "You're up early," she said softly. "Couldn't sleep either." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Sarah moved to the coffee maker, her movements automatic. "I keep thinking about that message. You're not welcome, Marcus. What if she escalates? What if she doesn't stop with the garden?" The question Marcus had been avoiding crystallized in the morning air between them. What if Karen's obsession with his garden was just the beginning? "I checked the security footage," he said quietly. "Sarah, it's bad, really bad." Her hand froze on the coffee canister. "How bad?" Marcus opened the laptop and showed her. Sarah's face went white as she watched Karen systematically destroying months of his work. When the footage showed her pouring herbicide on the roses, Sarah gasped and covered her mouth. "Oh my God, she's completely unhinged. There's more." Marcus fast-forwarded to show Karen making multiple trips, each one targeting different plants. "She's been at this for weeks, maybe months. Every time we were out of the house, every time we were in the front yard or inside, she was back here destroying everything." Sarah sank into a chair, her face pale. "We have to call the police." "With what evidence? Property damage? Trespassing. They'll take a report and maybe issue a warning. She'll get a slap on the wrist, and then," Marcus gestured toward the backyard, "then she really escalates. So what do you want to do?" Marcus had been asking himself the same question all night. The rational part of him knew Sarah was right. They should call the police, file a report, let the system handle it. But the rational part of him wasn't the part that had spent 3 months of his life creating something beautiful, only to watch it be systematically destroyed by a neighbor's malice. "I want to confront her," he said finally. "I want her to know that I know what she's been doing." Marcus, that's exactly what she wants. She wants you angry. She wants you to do something stupid so she can play the victim. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but the voice that answered was familiar. "Marcus Chen. This is Detective Rodriguez. With the Metropolitan Police, I need to speak with you about a complaint that's been filed against you." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "A complaint?" "Yes, sir." regarding destruction of property and harassment of a neighbor, a Ms. Karen Mitchell has accused you of vandalizing her garden and threatening her. I'd like you to come down to the station this morning to discuss the matter." The phone slipped from Marcus's hand, clattering onto the kitchen table. Sarah grabbed it, her face incredulous. "Detective, this is Sarah Chen, Marcus's wife. I think there's been some kind of mistake. Our neighbor has been vandalizing our property, not the other way around." "Ma'am, I understand these neighbor disputes can be complicated. That's why I'd like to speak with both of you. Can you come in this morning, say around 10? Marcus reclaimed the phone, his mind racing. "Detective, we have security footage showing Ms. Mitchell destroying our garden. She's been systematically vandalizing our property for weeks." "That's interesting, Mr. Chen, because Ms. Mitchell has photographs showing extensive damage to her property, along with what appears to be evidence of repeated trespassing in her yard. She also has a recording of you threatening her yesterday evening." "I never threatened her. I knocked on her door to check if she was okay, according to her statement. You told her this isn't over and that she would pay for what she's done. She has this conversation recorded on her phone." Marcus felt the world tilt. He'd never said those words. He'd been angry, yes, but he'd kept his conversation with Karen civil. "Unless, detective, I need to ask when did Ms. Mitchell file this complaint?" "Last night, around 9 p.m. Why?" Marcus looked at Sarah, whose face had gone ashen. Karen had filed her complaint hours before she'd carved the message into their fence, hours before the worst of the garden destruction had taken place. She'd been planning this. The whole thing had been a setup. "Detective, I'll be there at 10. "That's your right, Mr. Chen. I'll see you at 10. Marcus hung up and stared. At Sarah, she set us up. The whole thing yesterday, the noise, me going to check on her, the confrontation, it was all planned. She wanted me to come to her door. She wanted that interaction so she could claim I threatened her." "But you didn't. Threaten her? Doesn't matter. She says I did, and she has a recording. Even if the recording doesn't actually contain threats, by the time this gets to court, it'll be her word against mine." Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "Jesus, Sarah. She's been planning this for weeks, maybe months." Sarah stood up abruptly and walked to the kitchen window that overlooked their backyard. In the morning light, the destruction was even more apparent. The dahlia bed looked like a bomb had gone off. The rose bush that Karen had poisoned was now completely brown, its leaves scattered across the lawn like confetti. "There's something else," Sarah said quietly. "Something I didn't tell you yesterday." Marcus looked up. "What?" "When I was getting the mail last week, Mrs. Henderson mentioned that Karen had been asking questions about us, about our work schedules, about when we're usually home, about whether we have any friends or family who visit regularly." The implication hit Marcus like a physical blow. She's been casing us, learning our routines so she'd know when to strike. Mrs. Henderson thought it was just neighborly interest, but now Sarah turned from the window, her face determined. "Marcus, this woman is dangerous. This isn't just about the garden anymore. She's orchestrated an entire campaign to destroy us." Marcus nodded, his mind already working through the implications. If Karen was willing to go this far over a garden dispute, what would she do if she felt truly threatened? What would she do if her plan to get him arrested for harassment failed? "We need to be smart about this," he said. "We can't give her any more ammunition." "What do you mean?" "I mean we document everything, every interaction, every piece of damage, every contact with the police. We build a case that shows exactly what she's been doing and how she's been doing it." Marcus stood up, his resolve hardening. "And we figure out why she's really doing this. Because, Sarah, I don't think this is about the garden at all." As if summoned by his words, movement in Karen's backyard caught his attention. Through the kitchen window, he could see her standing by the fence line, holding what looked like a measuring tape. She was documenting something, taking photographs with her phone, building her case, adding evidence to support her claim that he'd damaged her property. "She's out there right now," Marcus said quietly, getting more evidence for her story. Sarah joined him at the window. They watched as Karen methodically photographed the fence from multiple angles, paying particular attention to the section where she'd carved the threatening message. The law office of Patricia Hernandez was nothing like the sterile corporate spaces Marcus had imagined. Family photos lined the shelves, and the scent of fresh coffee mixed with the faint aroma of jasmine from a small plant on the windowsill. Sarah had found Patricia through a friend-neighbor dispute specialist who'd built her reputation defending homeowners against harassment. "This is extensive," Patricia said, scrolling through the security footage on Marcus's laptop. She was a small woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "And you're certain this footage is from yesterday?" "Positive. The timestamp shows everything." Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "She filed her police complaint at 9 p.m. Most of this destruction happened after 10. Patricia paused the video at the moment Karen poured herbicide on the roses. She brought her own ladder, her own tools. This was planned." She looked up at Marcus and Sarah. "You said you think she's done this before." "We think so," Sarah said. "Some things," she said, "the way she moved through our yard like she knew exactly where everything was. It felt practiced." "All right, before we go to the police station, I want to do some research. Neighbor disputes create paper trails, police reports, civil complaints, HOA violations. If Karen Mitchell has a history of this behavior, there will be records." Patricia turned to her computer and began typing. "Karen Mitchell, Maple Street. Let me check the county court database first." Within minutes, the screen filled with case, numbers, and dates. Patricia's eyebrows rose. "Well, this is interesting. Your neighbor has been involved in 17 separate civil disputes over the past 8 years. That's more than 2 per year." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of disputes?" "Property damage, harassment, trespassing, noise complaints, and all of them involve neighbors." Patricia clicked through the files. 2017, she sued the family at 1247 Maple Street for allegedly damaging her fence during a tree removal. 2018, she filed restraining orders against 2 different neighbors. 2019, she claimed someone was poisoning her roses and filed a police report. Someone was poisoning her roses. Sarah's voice was sharp. But she was the one poisoning Marcus's roses. Patricia's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Let me pull up the details of that case." She paused, reading. According to the police report, she claimed her neighbor, a man named David Park, was systematically destroying her garden with herbicide. She had photographs, witness statements, even soil samples. Marcus leaned forward. "What happened to David Park?" "Charges were filed. He was arrested for destruction of property and harassment." Patricia's voice grew grim. "But here's the interesting part. The charges were dropped 6 months later. No explanation in the file, just a notation." That new evidence came to light. What kind of new evidence? Patricia clicked to another screen. "I'm not sure, but David Park filed a civil suit against Karen Mitchell shortly after the charges were dropped, claiming she'd fabricated the entire incident." She paused, reading. "The case was settled out of court, terms sealed." Sarah grabbed Marcus's hand. "She's done this before. Exactly this. She destroys other people's property and then claims they destroyed hers." "It gets worse," Patricia said, still scrolling. 2020, she accused a neighbor of threatening her. 2021, she claimed someone was vandalizing her house. 2022, she filed complaints against 3 different families on the same street. She looked up at Marcus and Sarah. Every single case follows the same pattern. She documents destruction of her property, claims harassment, files police reports, and then the cases either get dropped or settled quietly. Marcus felt sick. How many families has she done this to? Based on these records, at least a dozen, maybe more. Patricia leaned back in her chair. "But here's what's interesting. She's never won a case. Every time the charges against her targets get dropped or the civil suits get settled, that suggests to me that when people dig deep enough, they find evidence that she's lying. So why does she keep doing it?" "Because it works," Patricia said simply. "Even when the charges get dropped, she's accomplished her goal. She's driven people away, made their lives miserable, forced them to spend thousands on legal fees. Some of these families probably moved rather than continue fighting her." Marcus thought about the Hendersons' casual comment about Karen asking questions about their routines. "She's been casing us, learning our schedules, our habits, figuring out when to strike for maximum impact. That's exactly what a predator does." Patricia agreed. She identifies targets, studies them, then launches a coordinated attack designed to destroy their peace of mind and financial stability. She closed the laptop. But this time, she made a mistake. She didn't know about your security camera. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked. Patricia glanced at the clock on her desk. "Now we go to the police station and show Detective Rodriguez exactly what he's dealing with. But first, I want to make a few phone calls." 20 minutes later, Patricia looked up from her phone with a grim expression. "I just spoke with David Park's attorney. He's willing to share some information off the record. According to him, Karen Mitchell has been running this scam for over a decade. She targets families who invest in property improvements, then systematically destroys their work while building a case that they're harassing her." "Why hasn't anyone stopped her?" Marcus demanded. "Because she's careful. She never leaves evidence. She plans her attacks months in advance, documents everything. And by the time her victims realize what's happening, she's already painted them as the aggressors." Patricia stood up. "But your security footage changes everything. For the first time, we have clear evidence of her actually committing the crimes she's been accusing others of." The police station was a study in institutional beige with fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Detective Rodriguez was a tired-looking man in his 40s who seemed genuinely surprised when Patricia introduced herself as Marcus's attorney. "This is quite a collection of evidence," he said after reviewing the security footage. "Mr. Chen, why didn't you mention this when we spoke on the phone?" "Because I wanted to make sure I had everything documented properly," Marcus replied. "And because I wanted to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with." Detective Rodriguez frowned. "What do you mean, full scope?" Patricia opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "Detective Karen Mitchell has been involved in 17 separate neighbor disputes over the past 8 years. Every single one follows the same pattern she claims: harassment and property damage. Then the charges against her targets mysteriously disappear when evidence surfaces proving she's lying." The detective's expression shifted as he flipped through the documents. "Are you saying she's done this before?" "I'm saying she's done this at least a dozen times before," Patricia replied. "And I'm saying she's very good at it. She's been perfecting this system for years." Detective Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, studying the papers. "Mr. Chen, I need to ask you directly. Did you threaten Ms. Mitchell yesterday?" "No, I did not. She has a recording of your conversation." "Then let's hear it," Patricia interjected, "because if she has an actual recording of my client making threats, she should be willing to share it with law enforcement." Detective Rodriguez made a note. "I'll request a copy of the recording." He looked back at Marcus. "In the meantime, I want you to stay away from Ms. Mitchell. No contact, no approaching her property, nothing that could be construed as harassment." "What about her staying away from our property?" Sarah asked. "What about the thousands of dollars in damage she's caused? We'll investigate the allegations," Rodriguez said carefully. "But right now, she's the complainant and you're the subject of the complaint. That's how this works." Marcus felt frustration building in his chest. Even with video evidence of Karen's crimes, she was still being treated as the victim. Detective Patricia said, "I'd like to request that you contact the other families who've been victimized by Ms. Mitchell. I think you'll find a pattern of behavior that's far more serious than a simple neighbor dispute. I'll consider it." Rodriguez closed the file. "Mr. Chen, I'm not filing charges at this time, but I need you to understand that this situation is being monitored. Any contact with Ms. Mitchell, any approach to her property, any behavior that could be seen as retaliatory, will result in immediate arrest." As they left the police station, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and anger. No charges, but no justice either. Karen was still free to continue her campaign of harassment. "This isn't over," he said as they reached Patricia's car. "No, it's not," Patricia agreed. "But we're going to handle this strategically. Karen Mitchell has been getting away with this for years because her victims have been isolated, fighting her one at a time. That's about to change." "What do you mean?" Patricia smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus saw something that looked like hope in her expression. "I mean, we're going to find every family she's victimized and bring them together. Karen Mitchell has been running this scam for over a decade, destroying lives and driving people from their homes. But she's never faced a coordinated response from multiple victims." She pulled out her phone. "I'm going to make some calls. By the end of the week, Karen Mitchell is going to discover what it feels like